Hello everyone, Kaoz here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. I make many videos where I use the words changing forever, but last week we saw one of, if not the biggest update in 2025 and in recent memory, at least until the release of Valimar Part 3 in July. I've been super excited about all of these since I read about the initial blog, and that is exactly what today's video is all about. Boys and girls, if this video is informative, subscribe with notifications on, drop a fat like, and join our Discord server with the link in the description to play with me and our community. I'll be streaming more of these changes in the upcoming days, so join as we learn together. So like we did in my previous video, today I will show you everything the summer sweep-up brought with it, and I will once again do it from least to most impactful. This is of course in my personal opinion, and some of these may be more important for you and your account. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid list of how these changes will affect the way we do activities from here on out. So grab your favorite drink and snack, and let's begin. I will start with a quick one because it's not something I would personally recommend. Halberd weapons got another massive buff, and we can now hit flying enemies with them. The very first boss that came to mind is Kriara, and we went straight to the God Wars dungeon to check it out. Remember to bring your ecumenical key because even with the powerful Noxious Halberd, getting KC here will be pretty annoying. You can let me know if I'm missing something or if it's just a skill issue, but I simply do not see this being useful at the Armadillo General. Even if you bring Missouri for magic defense, if you pray range, both Kree and the mage minion can pack quite a punch. And if you pray mage, well, you can still get absolutely shredded, but I guess it was just an interesting experience to run on stream. This is even worse because to stay here longer, you might want to bring Ancients for which you will take up inventory space for much needed food. While I don't suggest doing this for Kriara, I was getting KC for the room with the Aviancies outside, and they were getting absolutely demolished by the Noxious Halberd. If you have an Aviancies task, you can try this out to hopefully make it much faster, but for Kree himself, you're better off sticking to Chinchampas, Abofa, or the powerful Timikin Shadow, which is my preferred method of taking care of this boss. More elemental weaknesses came into the mix, and nothing really changes from the monsters we mentioned in the previous video, which you can see on screen. Like I said before, most of these are aimed towards mid-level players without powerful weapons which can deal massive damage on enemies which are susceptible to magic. They won't be shifting any of the established metas too much, but remember to use a Twin Flame Staff whenever possible for that cool double projectile animation on your way to easier KC. And speaking of defense, we got more monsters added to the flat armor table to shake things up a little bit. If you didn't know, flat armor is a relatively new stat that works like this. If your max hit with melee is, for example, a 50, a monster with flat armor of 5 will have its damage taken capped at 45. Flat armor of -5 means that your max hit will be increased by 5. This number is what's added or subtracted from your final hit, and more often than not, enemies with positive flat armor will have slightly less HP to make up for their tankiness. You can learn all about it in this cool spreadsheet Jagex included in the latest blog. I'll now mention 4 small changes that together are more impactful than what we have mentioned before, but not as important as the ones coming up. We now have a new item in the game called Shark Lure, which is dropped by the monsters you see on screen at the time of making this video. These work like diabolical worms for anglers, and will let you fish shark just a little faster. Remember that doing this is still painfully slow, so make sure to manage expectations. There's a new spell in the standard spellbook called Monster Inspect, available at level 42, which will give you key information about a monster, more specifically for elemental weaknesses if they have any. This is a more convenient way to do this since you won't have to swap to the Lunar spellbook, but will give you less information than Monster Examine. We got small changes to the Tonel Sticks of Ralos, giving it 1 additional attack range to get enemies from farther away. And for your Cox enjoyers, Demon-Bane weapons are now effective at the Ice Demon in the Chambers of Xeric, so feel free to try out the Ember Light, the Scorching Bow, the Purging Staff, or even the Burning Claws to dump a ton of damage. Also, remember that the Amascut now drops Waska Seeds, joining the Hueycoatl in the list of NPCs that can drop it, which is literally just the 2 of them. At the time of writing this script, the wiki hasn't been updated to show the Amascut has the new drop, but the spreadsheet the Jagex made says that you should receive 1 roughly every 50 KC. On the topic of items, remember that we got a big rebalance to loot tables, and the summary is that we will be getting less resources coming from PVM encounters. This includes items like fish, seed, herbs, and gems, and at the time of making this video, Jagex is still investigating Soul Wars loot boxes because they were supposed to be massively nerfed to combat bots, but it seems like the change didn't come into effect. If you want to learn more about these, I will link the blog post in the description which contains all the changes. I think we can all agree that changes coming up will save you tons of hours. And what can you do with all that extra time? Well, of course, checking out today's video sponsor, Boots.dev. We are not at school anymore, so forget about boring classes and exams. Boot.dev is the exact opposite, and you'll learn how to code from scratch in different programming languages. My favorite part is that they have a level up system that tracks your progress, and as every old school RuneScape player knows, number go up is good. On top of gamifying your experience, they even have a ranking ladder so you know who the top dogs are, but don't let that intimidate you. Their Discord community is welcoming of new coders, and can even help you if you have a problem printing out Hello World. You can watch their videos to know if it's something that interests you, and if you get the paid version, you'll be getting hands-on experience to get your programming journey started. If you're not convinced yet, remember that the median salary for back-end web developers in the US was over $100,000 in 2024, so I would say that's a great incentive. If you use the link in the description or the pinned comment, or use my promo code Kaoz OSRS, you will get a 25% discount for the yearly plan, which to me sounds like the perfect deal if coding is something you may be wanting to get into. Thanks to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video, and let's continue. Okay, this change may seem a little underwhelming. There's now a reason to kill the deranged archaeologist in Fossil Island, and that's because he can now drop a new item called a Steel Ring, which is now the best in slot for stab, slash, and crush defensive bonuses. This will be crucial for early and the mid-level accounts, especially those of you doing the Moon's Apparel. As we all know, they can absolutely shred you without defensive armor, so this ring should definitely aid you in your journey to Blood, Eclipse, and the Blue Moon sets. Even if you're done with that encounter, the deranged archaeologist is now in the collection log, and if you get the ring, it will be one of the easiest green logs that you can get in the entire game. And speak of the devil, the Moon's Apparel encounter was changed a little bit. The most notable tweak is that apparently, the Blue Moon will spawn less tornadoes during one of the transition phases, and I know I'm blind as a bat, but honestly I didn't notice a big difference. The other is that fishing and hunter activities are less buggy, and this time around I had zero problems catching any fish. In the past, it would be a coin flip if you caught anything, but this is not going to happen anymore. Up next we have the Hueycoatl and items related to it. The only change was that the tail now has 300 HP as opposed to 400. I tried to solo before and after the update, and I could actually tell the difference since I got 1 KC 1 minute faster. But honestly, I don't advise anyone to do solo Hueycoatl because it's absolutely miserable. In a mass world, this is not going to be too noticeable because it dies incredibly quickly anyway, so you can give it a try and tell us what you think. We got the changes to its drop table, rolling a unique item at a 1 in 18 instead of a 1 in 23. The Dragon Hunter wand is more common, and this item got a massive buff. The damage bonus and accuracy against dragons went from 20 and 50% respectively to a massive 40 and 70%. Needless to say, this will now make dragons tremble, and paired with elemental weaknesses, I would say that you should get this weapon as soon as you can farm the Hueycoatl efficiently to take care of your dragon tasks a lot quicker. The other change is relatively minor, and the Hueycoatl hide now drops in batches of 3, and the crafting level required to craft each piece was reduced by 10, so iron accounts can make it much earlier. We got some interesting changes to both Obor and Bryophyta, but after trying them out, I can honestly say that it's not really going to be worth spamming any more than people did before. If you remember the proposal, we are now able to fight both giant bosses without either a giant or a mossy key. The catch is that killing the bosses won't grant any kill count, and you can only get it once you open the chest inside their lair with their respective key. This was a pretty smart way to counter people going in there to spam open keys, as well as killing the bosses as fast as possible to rack up KC quickly, which would have been a little discouraging for people with tons of KC. This will be mostly helpful for people grinding out combat achievements, and will of course help retain the value of both the Giant Hill Club and the Bryophyta's Essence, which sadly enough are moneymakers which our free-to-play brothers and sisters may rely on. If you have enough cash though, you would only be killing these bosses for those easy combat achievements. One of the most dopamine-inducing updates I've seen in a while, regardless of how tiny it feels, is that if you kill each Desert Treasure to boss once after today's update, as most of you have probably done already, is that they will drop gold rings to let you know if you have any progress towards your Vestige. If you didn't know, these bosses introduced a special drop mechanic where you will receive the Vestige item after rolling it 3 times, but there was no clear indication of when this happened. Some people even suggested sacrificing an Awakener's Orb at the boss info panel near the entrance to learn this information, but we never got anything similar to it until this day. I went to all 4 bosses and I was super happy to see that I was 2 out of 3 at Vardorvis, 2 out of 3 at Leviathan, and 1 out of 3 at Duke. I didn't get any for the Whisper, but that doesn't really concern me since it's my least favorite of the bunch. After your very first KC after this update, you will now know when you're making progress towards the Vestige with golden rings, which make this special jingle, and if you don't get any, well, that just means you haven't gotten lucky yet. So if you haven't already, make sure to go to each of them and let me know in the comments if you got any golden rings. The next change is not super impactful to a huge portion of the players, but to those who can make use of it, it's going to be absolutely insane. Grandmaster players can now show their helmet to the NPC at the entrance of the Inferno, and you will let them know that you want to challenge both the Inferno and the Fight Caves on your own terms, without the endorsement of a Slayer Master. What this means is that Grandmaster players can now do both of these encounters without the need of a Slayer task, and wearing the helmet inside will grant the damage and accuracy bonuses as if you were doing the Inferno or the Fight Caves on a task for all of the speedrunners and the pet hunters out there. Remember that you will not be getting any Slayer experience from this, as well as no boosted chances the pet on completion, and that receiving a Tazar task means that you can do these as you were able to before with the previous benefits. Cerberus changes are pretty significant if you want to stay there for longer, because you will be taking less damage and prayer won't be drained as much. In short, whenever Cerberus lays lava pools on the arena, you now have like one tick to react and not be damaged immediately after this mechanic. Additionally, they now only damage you if you stand directly on top of them, and the area around the pool itself won't damage you anymore. As for the ghosts, activating the Word of our Chaos spell now reduces prayer drain by 30%, meaning that they will now drain 21 prayer each, and a whopping 10 if you're wearing the Spectral Spirit Shield. This is absolutely massive, and it will definitely increase the length of your trips by quite a bit, especially with all of the Summer Pie and the Super Restore drops. A smaller change to something related to Cerberus is that Keymaster teleports now drop in bigger amounts, and most importantly, they are now tradable in the Grand Exchange. I have no clue as of why these were made untradable from the beginning, but will definitely be using them for Master Clues, since Trip to Cerberus itself is really not that bad. If you have many of these in the bank, it would be the perfect time to sell some for a little bit of extra cash. Like I said in my previous video, I'm not an avid Nex enjoyer, but I've been seeing the experts very much enjoying the update. We have 4 important changes, and the first one is that whenever she attacks with melee, she will guarantee at least 2 more melee attacks so you know what's coming and mitigate more damage to avoid the chugging bruise. Second, she can be damaged slightly past her transition phases in case you were still attacking her when she calls for one of the 4 mages, but this is a cap so you don't abuse it and keep hitting her past a certain threshold. Third, the magic attack during the final phase can be mitigated if you pray magic a little late, but you will still be damaged by a small amount. And finally, attacking the Blood Reavers during the Blood phase will heal you for 75% of the damage dealt. So this gives you a little bit of time in case you took a lot of chip damage during phases 1 and 2, and you want to keep risking it by waiting for these guys to spawn. When getting the KC for the trip, I noticed I was being healed from the Blood Reavers outside, so I don't know if this is a bug or an intended mechanic, which I honestly don't really see a problem with in case the Jagex wants to leave it like that. Getting into the top 3, you can now keep all of your potion ingredients after you kill Duke Succulus. In the past, any leftover mushrooms or salt would disappear when Duke woke up for the next KC. But thanks to a suggestion coming from Leagues 5, you can now harvest all 8 mushrooms on each side of the room, grind them, and mine as much salt as you want, and they won't disappear from your inventory unless you die. Oh, and you can now left-click Duke to feed him, rather than using the potion on the big blob. The amount of powder obtained depends on your herblore level, but at 82, you'll be getting 6 powder per mushroom, meaning 42 of each ingredient, which is enough to make 8 potions to last for 4 KC without having to prepare them every single one. Because of these changes, Duke went from 440 hit points to 485, and the timer now starts when the moment Duke wakes up, rather than when you're able to harvest the mushrooms. This means that the speedrun combat achievements were adjusted, and the Grandmaster time is now only 40 seconds. With a bit of RNG and some chunky hits, this shouldn't be as annoying to get as when you needed to spam click ingredients on Duke. The runner-up spot belongs to the Phosani's Nightmare. In terms of changes, this is probably one of the smallest on the entire list, but definitely one of the most impactful. Instead of 4 phases, you will now only need to do 3. That's literally the change. You technically start on what was phase 2, so you'll be dealing with 2 sleepwalkers initially, and go up from there. Things related to Phosani, the Sleepy Tablet now has a drop rate of 1 in 25, and if you go unlucky, you guarantee a drop at KC number 25. When you die, you'll be placed right outside the encounter, just like what they did with Yama, so both of these changes will save massive amounts of time and encourage actually learning this boss, which will make you a much better player. I've always thought of this encounter as one of the coolest ones in the game, but it took so long that farming it for the uniques or the pet just seemed like a hassle. And just like Duke, speedrun times were changed, with Grandmaster being 6 minutes or less. One final thing to mention is that despite Phosani being easier, Jagex decided not to change any of the drop rates for the uniques, so a massive win for this boss. And the boys and girls, as most of you probably already know, the biggest winner of this update is the Tombs of Amascut. I'll go over these slightly quicker because we have a lot to cover, including the new information on the purple chance and special mechanics on how items drop according to the invocation level. The monkey puzzle room had the 2 waves completely obliterated, shaman and venom baboons will now be dealt your max hit with ranged, and to make up for this, their HP was slightly increased. With max gear, I was killing the shamans in 2 hits and the venom baboons in just 1. Thanks to these changes, getting sub 2-minute puzzle even in a solo is now incredibly easy. The biggest winner of this update is Baba, and dare I say that as much as I love TOA, I think they overdid it with this room and I can now say it is easy scape. But it's honestly for the better because at higher invocations, Red X was pretty much mandatory. Protect from melee now nullifies all damage from Baba, and the throned rocks will also deal 0 damage if you're next to a boulder or a sarcophagus. The baboons who come to aid her in battle will also die pretty much in a single hit, and with the Jungle Jape's invocation active, they will now leave 2 sets of bananas behind instead of 1. Something I realized that's not specified in the blog is that you can now attack the baboons in quick succession, just like what they can do with the scurriest rats. Nothing really changes with the other mechanics, and as long as you can dodge falling rocks, kill monkeys quickly, and not mess up the boulder transition, you will be taking virtually 0 damage. The only downside is you will actually be using doses of prayer potion here, so make sure to measure your supplies correctly after each run, so you're not short on some doses towards the end. Kefri puzzle doesn't change, but for the fight itself, scarabs will no longer have their defense level increased according to raid level, and the melee scarab has its magic defense reduced, so hitting it with magic will be even more effective. Finally, the Mage Scarab will now bounce around the room after 3 hits even if it's a 0, to avoid nuking you with this attack if you get extremely unlucky and deal 0 damage. I give the J-mods a lot of credit, but something that completely baffled me was the fact that Mod Goblin said on Twitter that the Bone Dagger bug was, quote, unfixable. Something I learned recently is that the Bone Dagger special, which is supposed to guarantee a hit if you have not touched the boss before, does not work at Kefri, and it only works a few seconds after she wakes up from the swarm transition. So if you use a Bone Dagger, we gotta wait a little longer for a fix. Akka Puzzle has no big changes other than Obelisk HP being reduced to have an easier time with 1 downs in case you or your team do not have a super high mining level. Akka himself also received significant changes, and they are the following. Akka basic attacks will deal less damage when you're praying correctly. He can only protect against the style he's using. Stat Drain now only affects combat skills, and special attacks now happen every 7 attacks instead of 6, in case you're not doing the butterfly method. The Stay Vigilant invocation got a big change, and first, he will use a special every 6 attacks instead of 7. When you have this one active, Akka will change styles whenever he uses a special attack, meaning that it's easier to predict. As long as you never get hit though, he will never change styles, meaning if you can butterfly forever, he is not going to do this. The most massive change of all is that the amount of orbs spawning during the enrage phase is now laughable. And if you thought Baba was easy scape, well, take a look at your screen and tell me if this does not look ridiculous. Thankfully, dying at Akka will now be less common, and it's a matter of time until Jagex adds more orbs during the enraged phase, because again, as much as I love TOA, seeing this was honestly shocking. Finally, for the demi-bosses, water needed for the tree at the Zebak puzzle room will now scale linearly according to the number of players in the room, meaning that there can be a few mistakes and you can still clear it without Crocs griefing the tree. As for the fight, waves now have some harder pushback, but as long as you step on the empty spot or do the wave skip, you should be totally fine. No changes for the wardens, so all that's left to talk about are general changes to TOA and the loot. First off, you will now find a functional deposit box next to the helpful spirit, instead of the pot that made things a little awkward to deposit in your bank. We now have a new jewel called the Jewel of Amascut, and adding it to a Keris Partisan will turn it into a Keris Partisan of Amascut. This will bridge the gap between a Zami Hasta and an Osmundum's Fang, for those of you grinding TOA who do not have the squiggly sword yet. And speaking of gems, the rate of obtaining them has greatly increased at a rate of 1 in 50, up from 1 in 180. Remember that you will always get a unique jewel if you don't already have all of them, and the drier you go, the more common they will be. At 75 rates, the base drop rate for these will be 1 in 16, so a massive jump. The last thing to talk about are changes to purples. Like I said for the loot table changes, I will link the blog in the description, but the summary is that you'll be receiving less purples on average, but the higher the raid level, the better chances you have at actually desirable items, like Missouri pieces or the Timican Shadow. You're seeing the table with changes on screen, and as you can see, you can expect these higher value items in less raids if the RNG gods are in your favor. Okay, lightning round before the video ends of things I forgot to rank on the list. The Grotesque Guardian's Falling Rock attack now only stuns you if you're in the center, but will still deal damage in a 3x3. Some magic spell casting animations were fixed to avoid animation lag, and the 2-minute Thrall reward moved from the Grandmaster tier of combat achievements down to Master. To close out the video, I don't think there's a single change I dislike coming with the Summer Sweep up, but maybe Baba and Akka were made a little too easy for my liking. All of these tweaks should potentially make more content enjoyable and attractive to more players, and the Jagex did an absolutely phenomenal job with these. So what are you waiting for? Go test out all of these yourself and see how you like them. So boys and girls, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and you found the things in it useful. If you did, tell me which of these changes is your favorite and why, and if you include the term RSN and your username in your comment, you'll be entered in a weekly bond giveaway, for which I'll pick a winner on Friday's stream. I want to give a massive thank you to all the people you see on this list for financially supporting this channel, all of which goes towards my wife and my puppy to keep them nice and healthy, as well as a local animal shelter we donate to every month. If you want to be part of this list of legends, click the join button below to see all the cool perks and rewards you can get in the videos, in the live streams, and in the Discord for a monthly fee. In the next one, I'll go over everything you need to know to prepare for the third part of Valimor coming July 23rd. I also want to give a final thank you to boot.dev for sponsoring this video, so go check them out with the link in the description or in the pinned comment so you can learn how to code and be a legend. For now, I hope you have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.